What up, everybody?
Welcome.
What's up?
Welcome to another edition of Tip of the Spear Veterans Roundtable. Mr. Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing well.
Good to see you
how-
again.
Yes, sir. Good to see you. Rich, how are you, sir?
Doing great here in beautiful Fort Leavenworth.
Ooh.
Just
Matt,
not a guest.
Not
I
again.
guess.
They didn't book me a room this time. Maybe next time.
No.
I didn't even take the tour where I got to try it out and see what it was like. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I'd stay away. I wash my hands. No, I ain't gonna- Oh, hell. So, what's been going on with everybody here?
Same old same, man.
Well, I mean, we just got out of the holidays. How was your guys' holiday?
I had a good holiday. So Thanksgiving, did the thing with the family, got up the next morning at 04 and went to the woods and spent the weekend in the cabin up in Camp Hero, Kentucky, man.
What'd you bring back with you?
Absolutely nothing.
It's
Deer
hard.
deer was eternal on us.
Don't lie, bro. You brought a hangover back. You know you did.
No.
A half-eaten box of crayons.
Yeah.
I did do that. Yeah. What's up, Mr. James Thornton? How are you, sir?
That's
So,
funny.
yeah, tonight's going to be a good episode, I believe. We got some special guests that are going to be joining us. We got Mr. Donald Bramer, a.k.a. DB.
Okay.
He is the co-founder of the American Freedom Fund. He's also a former naval intelligence officer. He is also the founder of the Bramer Group in D.C. and other things that he does. He's just not known for those. He's a Kentucky native. So Ty will love that. And then we got Carl Truman. I don't know if he's in the wings yet. Carl
Yeah,
Truman.
he's in there.
Oh, he's in there. Carl Truman is a retired lieutenant colonel. He is a personal injury lawyer here in Louisville, Kentucky. A wealth of knowledge. He's very involved in the veteran community here in Kentucky. So I'm excited to have those guys, and I think we might have a few other guests as well. I think. Rich,
And you brought in the big guns, dude. I feel like we're all
Yeah.
gonna go to court after this. I'm gonna have to figure out like how to talk, how to answer the question. Am I getting polygraphed? Do I need to sweat? Like, what's it'll be okay though.
Don't worry, I got you here at Leavenworth.
I
I can
didn't
get
do
you
that
right
when I
out.
was in. I promise.
So what's up, Rich? I don't think I haven't met Rich before. This is my first time meeting Rich.
Yeah, definitely first time. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Good to see you.
See you. Air assault.
Yes, sir. Man, this ought to be fun.
Yeah. So
Man,
let's
it's-
why don't we go ahead and jump in and bring some of these guys in and talk to
Bring
them,
'em
learn
on.
about them, see what they got going on. Yeah.
Bring him on.
So there he is, the man, the other myth, and the legend.
Right.
There we go.
Oh man,
I
we
like
got
that.
everybody on here. All right.
Party.
Yeah.
It's a party.
Jake Holland down below. Jake Holland down below is my resident redneck for the Mystic Nation. He's here with me in
Yeah.
Leavenworth as well.
Good evening,
Listen,
everybody.
You
Good evening.
always need one of those, especially when the shit goes down. You're like, all right, we're
Hell
good to
yeah.
go. We
He
can.
just always asks whose car we take.
Yeah.
Carl, how are you, sir?
Good. I heard you all talking about Sport Leavenworth stories earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just trying to make sure nobody had a room reservation for the night there. You know.
Oh, well, I got a great Fort Leavenworth story.
Let's hear it.
All right.
So, many people may not realize Fort Leavenworth is the headquarters of the Army Command General Staff College. And I was an instructor I'm a graduate of the Command General Staff College and was an instructor with the Command General Staff College. I used to be active in my son's Boy Scout troop years ago, and he was that age. And we did this trip across Kansas, out west, and we stopped at this roadside rest area for lunch. And there were a lot of new dads that didn't know me yet. And someone looked at the sign, a sign said Fort Leavenworth. And I said, yeah, I did some time at Leavenworth. And they're like backing up, I said, oh, I'm an Army officer, it's the Command General Staff College. And that's, I was instructor there. So they acted like they still didn't know what to believe. I said,
Yeah.
well, I spent time at Leavenworth, not in Leavenworth.
Nice. Nice.
That's funny. They're like, "Are you sure you didn't do time? Like most criminals would say what you just said."
Yeah.
Right.
It was petty, I promise. It was over like $4 or $5. No big deal.
Leavenworth does have a fascinating history. It's where the Santa Fe Trail crossed the Oregon Trail out west.
Oh, wow.
And it's where Custer was stationed before Little Bighorn. And he also got court-martialed there for going AWOL to visit his wife.
Holy cow.
So question. Is Leavenworth, I've always heard rumors about it. Is Leavenworth really one of those places where the inmates turn big rocks into little rocks?
I think that's I don't know. I was never in that part of the area, but I think that's a myth. I think it's just a big federal prison.
Yeah, when I was a ceremonial guard, that used to always be the thing. They say, man, you know what? You're going to get in trouble one day. They're going to send you to Leavenworth. You're going to be spending your time turning big rocks into little rocks. So that was a big thing. I'm like, we don't want to do that.
You know, they have one hell of a furniture shop, though.
Huh?
They have one hell of a furniture shop.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Carl, sorry I missed you at the Toys for Tot event the other day. We were there at Broadbent Arena, but I guess we missed each other that night.
Well, I didn't go on the run. I started off to go out to do the run in my slingshot, and it was pouring down rain and really cold. And you know what? I said, I don't have to do this anymore. I'm just not going to do it. So I came out later in my Mustang to the finish. And, it was a lot lighter crowd this time. But.
Yeah, it was definitely lighter than it was last year.
So did the slingshot have a bunch of lights and all that stuff on it? You got one of those,
I haven't done all the flashy lights and stuff on it.
Okay.
I haven't gotten that crazy.
Gotcha.
Nice.
All right, Mr. DB, tell us a little bit about what you got going on, sir.
Well, thanks, guys, and thanks for having me. You know, this time of year, one of the biggest focuses that we have working on it is the 8th annual Manhattan's Martinis and Mistletoe. And David, you've been there with us before.
Yes, sir.
And it's a great event held in Washington, D.C. that highlights and really showcases not only our veteran community, but those who come together to support veterans when they come off deployment, when they leave the service, and those are just looking for a new tribe and a new way to participate around the country. We've got programs now in the Pacific Northwest, in the West, in the DMV area, and some in, whether it's golfing, equestrian, shooting, softball. It's about bringing people together and not only continuing their service, but continuing their tribe.
Right.
It is Wednesday, December 13th at the Mayflower. Now we've outgrown the museum that you came to, David. A few years ago, it was a sweep with win, place, and show for Kentucky. So we'll see who the winners are this year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we went up in 2019, and I was sitting at our table that we had upstairs, and right next to me, at a table next to me, was a sergeant major in the Marine Corps. And I looked at him, and I was like, man, he looks really, really, really familiar. I was like, so I went up and talked to him after I got the courage, after a few brown liquid courage, and went over to talk to him. Well, come to find out, he was my squad leader, Sergeant Jones, who was now Sergeant Major Jones. I was like, holy cow.
So the question is, once you started talking to him and realized that he was a sergeant when you knew him, did you get into the like, oh, you're cool, man, I could talk to you?
Oh yeah, definitely. He was. I mean, Sergeant Jones was super cool back then. And he was still super cool. Now it's Sergeant Major Jones. And yeah, it was a great time. And then M3 up there is a great event. They do American Freedom Fund does really amazing things for veterans throughout the country. So if you haven't checked them out, look at American Freedom Fund for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's been good to see the organization evolve and change. One of the things that I did when we wrote the bylaws for it is I didn't want it to become one of those stagnant veteran service organizations. So I gave myself a term limit. And I gave all the officers term limits. So I think I've served in every capacity now. And this December will be the year that I go into advisor emeritus, and they're kicking me out the door.
Nice. Yeah, I think a lot of veteran service organizations should do that. Put term limits on how long you can be the president or sergeant at arms, whatever position might be. I think that should be that way. So.
Well,
But
it's good to bring new blood in, and you got to bring new thoughts and new ideals, or you just become stagnant and you lose members. I serve on a couple other boards of other veteran organizations, and it's good because I can take lessons learned and now share them with other VSOs.
yeah, definitely, for sure. I know Carl, he serves as a advisor on several different boards throughout the city of Louisville, and I'm sure he can agree with that as well. You know, bringing in new blood and bringing new ideals to the table. So
Yeah, that's true with all organizations. Of course, sometimes it's challenging to get people to step up and do it.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and you get not much gratification for it, and you're the subject of a lot of angst because you don't agree with everybody, but then no one else has any other ideals.
oh yeah, definitely. Oh man, so I was looking at some military news, guys, and I don't know how much of this is true, but it says cavalry soldiers at Fort Carson can't see doctors in the early morning under new rules. Does anybody know anything about that?
No.
I have not heard that.
Crickets.
Yeah,
Well, let me
I
read
haven't
it here.
heard
Let's
that.
see. I'm gonna read it here. So an armor officer at Fort Carson, Colorado, this week issued a new set of policies to his formation, effectively banning soldiers from seeking mental health care, dental treatment, and legal counsel in the early morning hours to cement time for exercising, according to a copy of the memo reviewed by military.com. Huh.
Oh, if it's military.com, then we know that it's probably thrown out there to incite that talking point. I'd probably want to learn more about it before I said anything.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
It says here, it says soldiers are not authorized. This is soldiers are not authorized to schedule appointments before 0900. Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Boyd, commander of 4th Squadron, 10th Cavalry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. That's a tongue twister for you Army guys out there. I swear.
Yeah, but let's be honest though. What medical clinic on a base is open before 9?
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So
Most of them are closed until after PT, so that's probably
Yeah. So in the whole article, you just went, okay, debunked. That's not true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds like Private Snuffy complaining about something.
Yeah, probably.
That's exactly what that sounds like.
So did anybody hear about the Osprey that crashed in Japan?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I read that this morning.
What do we know about that?
All I seen this morning was that they recovered one body, one dead, and I think 5 missing still. As of this morning, they did find lots of parts of the Osprey, the most dangerous vehicle out there. So,
yeah, definitely.
Well, they've been trying to kill the Osprey on the hill for years, and the biggest thing about it is, one of the smart things they did with the Osprey is they put a supply base that covers 46 states. So anytime you try to kill the Osprey, you start taking away jobs in key districts. And so the harder you try to kill it, the more members you try to kill. Well, that's going to kill jobs in my district.
That aircraft has had trouble since the very beginning.
Absolutely. I mean,
yes.
It falls out of the sky like a nickel.
Yeah, I remember when right before I got out of the Marine Corps, the Osprey came around, and the several crashes from the get-go. I mean, it got to the point where the Marine Corps grounded them for the longest time. So luckily, I was one that never got to ride one of those. Give me a 53 or a 46, and I'm fine. Give me that. I'm good.
There was a separate crash in Australia this year as well that killed all on board.
See, that's crazy right there. And that's yeah. No, that is super crazy, guys.
Yeah. So my mic was muted just now. I was going to ask a question because DB and Carl, you guys were talking about a lot of times getting people to get involved in organizations, right? Whenever you have all these things that people could do, I think a lot of your VFWs and American Legions would agree with that. So I guess my question for all you guys on here is like, what do you think can be done to get our generation of people to get more involved with those services, organizations, get involved in those things? Because eventually, if we don't, they're going away.
Yeah.
And that would be a huge disservice to the community, much less the veteran community, right? Because they do so much. All the organizations that are veteran organizations isn't just about veterans. Sometimes they also do it for the community. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think could be done to get people more involved or want to get more involved, right? Because to preface that, it just feels like it's just like the military. You've got 10% of the people doing all the work and 90% of the people are just getting by. You know what I mean? It's just the way it goes. If you're motivated and going to do it, they're going to keep coming to you. And we're finding the same thing when you get out, you know?
Well, you're exactly right. And that seems to be a problem, particularly younger people. Young people, they don't want to join. They just don't, they don't like joining. I was talking to a young veteran and I said, trying to tell him, look, you need to join the Legion. And he said, oh, I don't want to join that. It's just a bunch of old guys sitting around drinking beer. And I said, well, one of these days you'll be an old guy sitting around drinking beer, you know.
Yeah,
but,
true.
you know, but seriously, I mean, it's like your labor union on the Hill. I said, you know, when the VFW, the Legion, AMBET, when they show up on Capitol Hill, they get an audience, you know. So maybe it's educating these young veterans that this is why they have these benefits, is because these organizations, you know, went to these congressmen and senators and got an audience and lobbied for you to have this. And if you don't carry the torch to the next generation, you know, it may disappear.
Yeah. And do you think it's not just the miseducation of it, but do you think that people, you know, from one generation to the next, you know, when you got the older guys that are in the VFW and the Legion, you know, from the Vietnam era and a little bit after, there was a huge, I don't know, there was more of a togetherness, like a brotherhood built, right? And I don't know if you necessarily see that a lot in today's society. And so a lot of the kids that are getting out, if you compare them, in my opinion, from what I see, to what a lot of the guys on here did, you got people that are getting out after 4 or 5 years, sometimes not even finishing their enlistment, still honorably because things happen, right? But it's like they don't really realize that, like, yeah, even though you didn't do a full time, I still think some people are like, I didn't do enough time to go help, or I didn't, you know, warrant enough time to do that. And so it's sometimes it's tricky, but how would you even approach getting people educated on how that works, or what would do for them? Like, what would be a good thing to help people see what they can do to get involved?
You know, I'll jump in. I think a lot of these organizations need to really take a hard look at rebranding themselves. And they need to do partnerships with some of the other younger VSOs so that they're not labeled as just being, you know, a one-trick pony where they are the old guys sitting around the bar pulling beer tabs. And I'll use what we're doing in DC as an example. Is we've reached out to American Legion and VFW, and they partner with us on some of our events so that they've got kind of I guess an introduction to some of the newer veterans. To caveat on another comment you made, Matt, you're right. You know, right now I saw a report that over 60% of our enlisted are getting out after one contract. And I heard the comment the other day from a young sailor, and I asked him how he was doing. He said, just fill in my contract, sir. And, you know, so that's I think it's morale's really bad right now in the enlisted ranks. And I think because a lot of them feel that too much politics is being brought into the military, and they don't want to be a part of it.
Well, I think that a lot of people in those in today's military, you know, I retired in 2019. You just recently retired as well. You see the change of how it goes from leadership from one generation to the next. Nowadays, I talk to guys and they just feel like they want to lead, right? But if you do lead and you hold someone accountable, it's almost like being in a civilian corporation. Like, what is someone going to say if I hold this person accountable? So sometimes it comes down to, even though you're doing the right thing, you don't know if you can do the right thing. And so that becomes frustrating for old guys like us that came in a time where, you know, you do what you're told, you go into any situation where you know what you're supposed to do, you know how you're supposed to do it, and you have the leader that's leading you do that. The fact that people a lot of times nowadays, I was listening to one of the podcasts that Rich was on talking about people walking in and going, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that today. And like, that would have never happened a long time ago.
Right.
But now it does. And so that kind of takes away the whole premise of what joining the military is, right? Discipline, self-guidance, direction, giving you meaning, giving you purpose. And I just don't sometimes see where people are, taking advantage of that or learning from that, right? I remember a lot of people come home from boot camp and parents going, "What did you do with my kid?"
Right.
You know what I mean? And nowadays they're like, Johnny's back. And you're like, wait a minute, what? You know what I mean?
One of the things, Matt, I would say, and I can't fully blame it on it, but I think that a lot of that change started when we went to a kinder, gentler Navy, right? Or a kinder, gentler military mindset, because now we're catering to what the people coming in are wanting to do versus what they need to do. To be brutally honest, the military you have to look at what the military is and why people go. If you're joining the military for education or you're joining the military for travel and things like that we're telling them, when you really think about it, that's really kind of the wrong reason to join the military, because there's so many other things that happen or that you have to deal with that are real life that the military entails that causes you or needs you to have that militant mindset, right? That militant, knowing how to take orders, knowing how to get up, make your bed, knowing how to be on time, knowing how to do things, because if you don't do those things, people die, right? Our equipment is not put together right, or you know what I mean? So when we went to more of a kinder, gentler way of doing things, I think it took a lot of the sting out of what the military was. And I can't fully say that that's to blame for, but I think once we started going that direction, we've seen a lot of change.
For sure. Perception, though, too. Parenting, right? Helicopter parenting. Don't let kids make decisions. Make sure that they get through everything well. There's no adversity. It's not hard. Everything's good. And I think a lot of people, once, the kids that do decide to join the military, get into boot camp, right? And now it's hard. And now you're not doing everything right. And now you have to make a decision. And now it means something to make this decision, and it's on you. And so we push a lot of there's a lot of mental struggle with that. But, the days of rub some dirt on it and go keep playing, they don't do that anymore. And so now when they're getting in, I think that's part of the problem is they just really truly don't know what to do. They're not prepared for that. And, RDCs and drill sergeants and all these people running boot camp, they're old guys. So when they see these, they're like, really? You can't do it? What are you talking about? And so the way they were trained is the way they go at people to train. And so some of it could be like a reteaching, but it's just how things are moving as a whole. It's like we've got to find a balance to get it, because like DB said, retention is horrible. Me and Scott, we came from a recruiting background. We retired as Navy recruiters. That's what we did. That was our career. And now when you're looking at recruitment and talking to those guys, like Chuck has it on there, the recruitment standard is getting lower. But here's the reality. If you don't lower the standard, you're not going to get anybody to join. So you're in you're right now. It's the lesser of two evils.
Right.
We need the people, but the people that can go aren't coming in. So we're going to try to find the people that we can bring in. But then there's all these things societal that are getting in the way as well, right? That makes people ineligible to join, or they can't do things. They used to tell us, 10% of the population can join the military. 8% of that is willing to do it, and only 3% qualify. Good luck.
So I guess one of the things that I've brought up that I've tried to push on the Hill for a couple of years is creating some form of, national service, whether it be military, a domestic Peace Corps, or faith-based. What's your all's thoughts on that?
So I'm gonna jump in here. Me personally, I think everybody, if you turn 18, you should either join the military. I highly believe that. Like my daughters, they're 15 and 16, and they're both thinking about joining the military. I think we should have everybody in the United States join the military, whether it be a 2-year or a 4-year contract. A lot of countries out there do it, like Korea. Everybody has to serve in the military there. I think it's something that we need to do in this country because, like Michael says there, our military has gone soft.
Israel does a phenomenal job with their service. And,
Germany as well.
One of the most impressive intel units I ever saw was an entire unit, and they were physically handicapped, but they were intellectually gifted because they were able to observe imagery in ways that people don't look at because they had a different insight from it. And it was amazing just the way that they did that, but also they, for the wartime action, the conflict that Israelis suffered constantly, they had a lower per capita PSD than we do because of the support that their families give.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
one of the buzzwords that I hear all the time, especially as an employer for young people in particular, is work-life balance. They got to have work-life balance. No, I can't work. I can't work this weekend. I got to have my mental health time. I got to have my work-life balance. And I try to say, look, if you want to be successful, if you want to run a business, be an entrepreneur. There is no such thing as work-life balance, but I'm just
I mean, part of that comes from what those kids see today, though, right? Work-life balance. They pull up TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and they see these young kids their age, and you can Google them. They're making millions to make videos, but what those kids don't realize is that person's putting 60 hours in a week to make those 10 5-second video. Like, there's work that goes into it, but the perception of it is it's not. And it's fun, like work-life balance is, I mean, what do you mean by that? And that's the thing. Ask them, well, what do you mean by that? They'd probably go, well, work-life balance. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Explain it to me. You know what I mean?
I wonder if that is spilling over into military life.
Yeah. It does. It does, 100%.
Absolutely.
Jake and I get to train soldiers on a daily basis, and we see it on the front lines. We've seen the change when it went to a male soldier can have frosted tips in their hair because we went to the individual instead of to the team mentality. We went from we're a gang, we're the biggest gang in the world in the Army, to we're a gang of individuals. And that's what the Army is turned into right now. And I'm sure it's across the board in all the services. And we see that every day when we train, and we look at each other as retirees. And we just thank God I can't yell at them anymore. I'd probably have an aneurysm today. And I mean, today we trained some senior NCOs, so it was all right today here at Fort Leavenworth. But most part, when we train soldiers, it's the aneurysm. You can feel it in the back of your neck as you're talking to them, and you want to reach out and you want to throat punch them and you want to give them that knife hand all day, but you can't because you're constricted. And then I've seen the question in the chat here about joining BSO such as the Mission Continues, Team Rubicon, Team RWB. Why do most people join those? Well, I can tell you, people join Mission Continues because they give them stuff. They give them T-shirts. They give them trips to places so they can drink and hang out with people. That's why they go. They don't go because there's anything else. If most we want to find a purpose in life, those organizations portray a purpose, but they don't actually fulfill that purpose. They give those guys T-shirts, they give them backpacks, they give them bags, and they give them a weekend free somewhere to go get drunk and hang out with their boys and girls. But other than that, that's the reason why they're joining. Team Rubicon is the only one of those three that I can support and say, hey, they actually serve a purpose because they go out and actually help people in an emergency situation. If you join something like this Mannion Foundation, you go out and you mentor youth to be the next generation, the next generational leaders. That's much better. And Jake can talk to more of this as well.
I'm like Rich. There's days that we train, I sit and shake my head because it's like I'm glad. Well, I'd be behind those walls a few miles behind me right now if I had to lead some of these soldiers that are here right now. I come in 1986. I'd been in the unit about 3 days when my first sergeant dragged me behind a Connex, and he put me on the ground, and he never had a problem with me again. Yeah. And I think we need more of that. Not that I absolutely advise, smacking soldiers around, but some of them need it. And and sometimes all it is, you got to think. A lot of them come from a place they don't have a father, they don't have good parents, and maybe they're looking for that. And it's up to some senior NCOs and some junior NCOs to give it to them.
Yep, you're right. Yeah. I think they are. I think that a lot of people are looking for it, even though they don't want to admit that they are. And I would tell you, I was one because my goal when I joined the military, I told my family, I said, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks because the first time somebody tells me to do some push-ups or tells me to do something, we're going to get into it and I'm coming home. That was my thing. I told my cousin, I said, man, don't worry about it. The recruiter going to come get me. I'll be gone for 2 weeks. They're going to send me home. But it took for I had a senior chief that came in, and I mean this senior chief, he got in my behind, and he was a lot bigger than me, a lot scarier than me, and had a lot more power than I did. But what he did was something that I take on now. Is what he did is he put me in my place. He kind of embarrassed me a little bit in front of people, but when he pulled me to the side, he let me know why he was doing it, and he put everything back on me. He said, "You know what? You're talking about you want to go home. You ready to get out of here. If I send you home, where do you think you'll be in 2 weeks to a month from now?" And I stood there. I said, "I don't know, probably dead. I don't know." He like, "Is that what you want?" Right? He said, "You have every opportunity right now to do something for yourself, to make your family proud, to be a stand-up citizen in the world. And you want to mess it up because you want to be tough. But let me tell you something. You're not tougher than me. I'm come from the hard streets of St. Louis. I've seen this, I've seen that." So, he put me in my place, but he told me that, "Hey, but I'm not going to kick you out because that's what you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some responsibility. I'm going to give you a job. And I want you to hold. I'm going to check in on you every day to make sure that you're doing it right." And, he did that for me. And he gave me a leadership position, even though I was in there acting like a jackass. You know what I mean? And he took me back. He said, "Now, when you go back out there, act like I did something to you." So I went out. I went back out like, man. But the crazy thing about it was that's all I needed. That's all I needed. Because I'm coming from home, coming from gangs and stuff. I got shot at more times before I joined the Navy than I did when I got in. And I only planned on being in 2 weeks. And I went in and stayed 20 plus years. But it's those small things that I needed because I felt like I was a tough guy. I felt like I had control of everything. But until I met somebody tougher, somebody stronger, and somebody who had something going for them, it took me to see that and to understand my place. And then I went along. And then I went from being the most likely to get kicked out to getting the Lone Sailor Award when I got out, and ultimately going to the ceremonial guard in Washington, D.C., at the White House and all this other stuff. So I know it can happen, but it wouldn't have happened for me if I would have been able to go into boot camp and be the person I was when I walked in the door. So I agree with what you guys are saying, that you sometimes, even though we don't want to admit it, we need that tough. People need that tough shaking. You know what I mean?
He saw something in you, and that's he saw a spark, and he just fanned the flame and let it go. But
for sure,
but it makes me think. When I first went in, Vietnam was still fresh, and so I had a lot of Vietnam veterans that I served with, and I'll never forget this one sergeant major that I met, and he told me his story, very kind of similar to what you were saying. He said, he got arrested for something, and he was gangs and all that. I forget where, but it was back in the day when the judge could say either the Army. Yeah. And so he said he took the Army, and he said it changed his life forever.
Really?
Yeah. He was headed definitely to either prison or the graveyard, and now he became a sergeant major.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So I want to. So will the Glory to the Moonspoon Woody put a comment in? Men, do conscientious objectors get treated differently out on the field? I'm not really understanding where he's trying to go with this. So I can tell you,
if you're a closet conscientious objector, nobody should know. But if you are a conscientious objector, you're probably not in the military because you can't join with that. There's a question on the sheet that says if you check yes there, you can't join because you have to be willing to protect your country. We get it, like morality and things like that come in, but there's a specific question for that. But I'm sure, to Will's point, there's people that get in that they just don't check the box, right?
Right.
But
and I can tell you, I don't think in the 6 years I was in the Marine Corps, I ever came across somebody who said they were conscientious objector.
That's because they're Marines and they can't pronounce a word like that.
Right.
I'm surprised you got that one out just now, dude. That was good. Hey, did you have Siri put it out to you before you said it? You muted real quick?
Yes. Yeah.
He had phonics spelled out for him on that.
Yeah.
I would tell you, though, think about today's time and age. Today's time and age, what someone thinks as a conscious objector is probably somebody that's just scared and not sure of what to do next, if that makes sense. If you think about, like, not being able to make a decision for yourself. Like we just talked about it. You got to make a decision. You have to be accountable. You have to know that you messed that up. That is your responsibility. And now you have to answer for it. That is what makes people scared and wants to run away. And so maybe sometimes that can get like mixed up. But every time as a recruiter, you have to explain that question to the young man or woman that's joining, and you tell them exactly what it means. Like, I never heard anybody tell me like, oh, I am. They were like, hell no, I'm not. Like, I'm good to go. Like, let's go. Right. Like, I want to, I'm for it. But again, I'm sure people get through, but conscious objection right now is just like Rich has talked, like, we were talking before. No, I'm good. I don't think I'm going to do that. You're like, wait a minute. You're not going to do that. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, again, I just gave you an order of something you're going to go do, but you can tell me no. And so that's the part of it too. And I think another part is like the leadership that's coming up in the military right now is that transitional leadership, that they had some hard guys and they really didn't think the hard way was the way to go. And there are parents, they're going, when I become a leader, I'm never going to do it like that. And so because they're not going to do it like that, they don't see the value in it. And what Scott said just now was super important. Most of the best leaders I ever worked for were the hardest ass people I've ever known in the military.
Yeah,
but the
same.
one thing they did for me is they would blow my ass up and I would get in trouble, but they would always at some point, you know why I did that to you, right? Mm-hmm. Let's understand how this works. And I always understood the purpose and why something was happening. Sometimes I figured it out on my own when they give you all this responsibility, and then later on you figure out they were just setting you up for the next level, right?
Yep.
There was always a purpose behind something, and I don't know if nowadays that purpose is being put into all the training that they're giving, so there's probably not a lot of pride in service, being a part of that team, wanting to, everybody is everybody's protector, having your six and things like that. It's just a different time. And so I really hold out hope. I really do. Everybody said that I was going to be a fuck up when I was coming up in the military. And they also said my generation was going to cause America to go into the toilet. Kind of didn't do that. We kind of didn't do that. I'm holding out hope that it's going to be that way. Like, even though we have these challenges, we're fucking America, man. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get it moving. And I think it's going to go in the right direction. But we're just like all the old men that looked at us. They were like, oh, we're screwed now. So there's still points of me where I'm like, okay, we can be okay. But I think it's going to come into, like, unfortunately, some crazy shit's going to have to happen where people are like, damn, there is a reason they were in my ass all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're enjoying a good life right now, and that's a good thing. But they have all those adages for that and everything. So it's pretty hard to kind of figure out. But I'm holding out hope. I think we're going to be okay.
Well, I think as Americans that are not military or haven't been in the military or law enforcement, a lot of them are complacent. Like, they're like, oh, nothing's going to happen. We're protected, which anybody knows at any given moment, terror could strike on American soil. It happened in 9/11, and it could happen tomorrow. And people need to wake up and realize that, yes, nobody's going to try to invade America because there's too many rednecks out there with guns. They might get the eastern seaboard and the western seaboard, but when they get to the middle of America, that's so people just need to wake up and realize that something's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. I think that it can work well, but I mean, I'd be interested to hear from DB, like being where you're at and the things that you do. Is there anything you can share with everybody on stuff like this, on where it's going or the projection we're trying to go? What kind of things are we trying to do to mitigate that? I mean, people have talked about recruiting standards. They're getting lower. I know that's a reality. It's happening, but there's a reason for it. A lot of people, we just want to complain and say that, like, we're lazy now and we don't care, but there's always reasons we do things. I'm just interested to see if there's anything you can talk about that maybe we see on the horizon that's coming, that's going to make, again, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't see it yet. You know what I mean?
I guess I'll start with one kind of interesting fact. I have a kind of my protege who just finished Great Lakes, and now he's in ISA school at Damnack. And he called me and he's like, these kids up here, and he went in at 25, so he went in because he left a good job at Deloitte because he wanted to serve. But he was saying, like a lot of those kids, if there was something they didn't want to do, they would literally start crying to get out of it. And he said, I had, males and females who would lay down on the floor bawling, and the RDCs would be like, well, we'll get somebody else to do it. Wow. And that's the tone that you're setting at boot camp. Right. And because I gave him all my Great Lakes stories, and then I gave him all my stories from Newport, up at Rhode Island. He's like, oh, it's not like that now. I'm like, well, you had no fun.
Right. That's what I remember. All that bullshit was fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you relive those stories of what your drill sergeant or your RDC or, in boot camp or when you're going through schools, you're like, that was the best time ever. And then people look at you like, for real? You're like, oh, you have no idea. It was so great.
And, so they've kind of started to go backwards. So earlier this year, like when he was in school, they had expanded Navy boot camp from 8 weeks to 10 weeks. And that was because they were doing, 2 extra weeks of DEI training, diversity, inclusion, et cetera, et cetera. And they got a lot of heat from Congress, and it's actually in the NDA. That's being drawn back. It's going to cut funding. So I think, what they need to do is bring some of the enlisted in, and and either behind closed doors or whatever, and let our lawmakers understand like what is the problem and how do we fix it? Because there's a lot of good kids out there that want to serve, but they go in and they look around them and they're like, here I am in physical shape, I'm doing my best, busting my ass, and you got the kid next to me who can't even pass a PRT because he can't even do one fucking crunch because he had to go to fat camp before he got there.
Yeah. Well, I think that part of that too is like the way they do MEPS now. I don't know if you guys are aware, but when you go join the military now and you go to MEPS medical, you go see the doctor, they're going to look up your medical record electronically, right? So anytime you've gone to the doctor, anything you've done, they can see it. And nowadays, the just the adage of today from what Scott and I saw when we were recruiters, the big thing for us was asthma. Like if you had asthma, you couldn't join. You had to be free from an inhaler for 18 months. The doctor had to talk to you. There was a whole like reason behind that. Well, today what's going to happen? Anybody that's gone to mental health counseling for any reason, which is an important thing to do, it's a disqualifier. Yeah. So just because your parents got divorced and now like I really want to go talk to somebody to make sure I'm okay, can't join the military because you went and saw a counselor. Even if it wasn't bad, you went and saw them. You know what I mean? It's like the whole thing too with like tattoos, if they're too big or too much. We hold all these rules and have all these things in place to disqualify people. And I used to argue with a lot of people when I was in recruiting. Like you would have people that make, you have these standards come out for certain jobs. And you would call the program manager and go, I know you wouldn't be in the military today if that was the standard. So how is it that you're going to change that and hold everybody to the fire in that when you yourself never had, like we gave you a chance or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like you were given a chance. Somebody gave you a second chance to do something right. But now you're going to hold that against somebody. They can't get in. Like that's the most contradictory thing in the world and completely like against what the military is all about. Taking those people, giving them second chances, serving your country. And it just feels like right now we're in this like black hole space where things are so lost. We know where to go, but the path to get there is like we're being bounced around in a pinball machine and it's not going, in one direction. It's sometimes frustrating to see, but
I think COVID had a lot to do with this. A lot of the kids that I work with today, and even the ones that we try to recruit for our firm, and I bet Carl sees this, they don't want to work because why work when you can telecommute, work from home? And it is about that balance, or what's my title going to be? Who the fuck cares? Sorry.
Yeah. I've never had a job. Am I going to be in charge?
Right.
Absolutely.
It amazes me about, how many hours do we work? Well, you work till you get your stuff done. And I, and a lot of, I think the corporate world hurt us because, a lot of these big companies would tell these kids, Well, as long as your laptop's on, we'll count that as as a billable hour. And so they would get up, turn their laptop on, and go back to bed.
Wow.
And and it's so much that they even created apps that would move your mouse as if you were there.
Never heard of
those. You can download a mouse, and if it does, your mouse moves, and you're not even there, and it's a cycle that an entire group of kids.
Yeah, these kids are smart. These kids are smart these days. Yeah. But one thing that you said, Matt, is disturbing in a sense, is because if somebody seeks help, whether if it was parents got divorced or you had something going on, that should be looked upon as a positive that you went to go get help. Absolutely. It should not be looked upon as a negative, because when you think about it, if somebody has problems and society makes it seem like something's wrong with you if you seek help, a lot of people won't do it, and then you wonder why people are going in schools and doing these crazy things, because they don't know how to process these emotions that they have. They're tied to these video games that show them that I can kill 100 people in a video game and I come back and reset. You know what I'm saying? They don't see the blood and gore. They're desensitized by a lot of that stuff, but they're not getting the help that they need. A lot of parenting and stuff now is done by video games and iPads and, iPhones. It's not the same kind of parenting that we had. So there's a lot of people that are running around with all of these AI mentality.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing, Scott. If you look at it, dude, turn on the TV, bro.
Right.
How many TV programs can you watch before you see 3 or 4 commercials in a 30-minute period about you can call this person and get help? You can call them and get that. You can call this person and get this medicine to help you. It's medicine, counseling. And what it is exactly what you said. It's let us give you shit so that you can function. Don't ever try to go through it, because, going through it and learning something from that is not good. We'd rather make the money to do this. That's a different topic for another day. But that's our society, and that's the problem, right? So all those kids are encouraged to do that. But then when they get in the military and they've got an older guy like me that's their first sergeant or their chief, and they're like, I got to go for a mental health day. I can tell you right now, there's people in the military that are like, what do you mean? Or, oh, really? You got to, and then they give them this stigma that makes them go, oh, well, I guess that was a bad fucking request. I should probably never do that again. And then it sticks with them. And so there's like a bridge that needs to be built, right? And I'm gonna tell you right now, guys like me and everybody here, we're probably the worst for that bridge, because some of us know we got to cross it. We're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. We're going to stay on this side because I'm good, but I know you can get help. You know what I mean? It's like it's very tricky because it's accepted in society now, but not in the military. And we wonder why we can't recruit people. Well, I don't know. Maybe you should change the 1960s standards and bring them to today, and we might be okay. You know what I mean?
So I have a question for those people with more of you that have more recent experience, because I retired in 2009, so it feels like a century ago. But I've always felt that, and it may be more in the officer corps, that the tolerance of mistakes, in peacetime is zero. Like, you screw up, you're either going to get relieved, you're going to get a bad OER, zero tolerance. Of course, then in wartime, there's, more tolerant, mistakes can be made. And of course, it all depends on the chain of command. There's some leaders who, say, if you don't make a mistake, you're not trying. But then, so I'm kind of wondering, has it shifted back? Is the military now a zero tolerance of mistake environment? Or how is it?
I'll answer your question there, sir. It really depends on where you're at. And it depends on the command climate. I'm good friends with a CW5 in the 160th, and he said things are so bad over there right now. He said he constantly tries to fire warrant officers, get them relieved, or his pilots or whoever, and nothing ever comes of it. But then there's other units that, if a PL screws up bad enough, they're out. They get moved to a battalion or brigade staff position and sit there until their term is up. So it really depends on the command.
Yeah.
See that?
Hey guys, have a great night. I've got to bail, but thank you so much for having me.
Thanks,
Have a good
DB.
night.
Talk to
Great
you,
meeting,
brother.
DB.
You too.
Yeah, I think that when you look at how that works today, it's completely what Jake said. It's a command structure, but I think it's more of a leadership structure, right? It depends on the leadership that you have. It depends on how they've been trained. It depends on what's important to them, and we all know that from service to service, it's different, right? Coming from the Navy and where I was at, me and Scott were both in the Navy. We were both chiefs, and when you get to that chief level in the Navy, for everyone that knows, right? Like that's a completely different mindset in the military than other services, right? You send your chiefs through a program in order to bring them into that senior level leadership to be able to be the bridge between the junior enlisted and the officers. So chiefs in the Navy are training your junior enlisted to get the job done, but they're mentoring and developing junior officers. And so if you don't have a strong chief that can go to the officer and be like, hey, here's the deal. We need to have a talk professionally, right? Then you have that officer that's, and I saw it in the Navy. There was officers that didn't believe in chiefs, but they never had a good chief. They never had a chief that would go out there, cover their ass, get it done, get people to go to work. They just never had that confidant that they needed, I guess you'd say. But then when you had the leaders that did that, even back when we were, to what Jake said, it depends on where you're at and what you're doing. I went to a couple of recruiting districts in my career because I did recruiting for the longest. And I went to one, hot fucking garbage. It was a mess. There was no morale. Everybody was upset. It was a dumpster fire from day one. Then I go to the next place and I was like, holy shit, what happened in here? Completely different. The atmosphere was better. Everybody was happy. It's the same job. And everybody had the same complaints. We work too much. We do too much. It all came out on the command service, but the leadership and the importance they put on things was a little bit different. And that allowed the senior level leadership to focus in on things they needed to with the junior enlisted to be able to make sure that their morale was good, if that makes sense, right? I don't think you're ever going to have a change in that from generation to generation. It's just going to happen. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how it goes going forward, right? Because there is a lot more change than we've all experienced in today's military from when we were in.
Yeah,
that's been 2 years since retirement.
Speaking of Navy, it seems like I'm constantly reading about senior officers in the Navy being relieved. I don't know what's going on there. That, of course, you don't know why, but
there's been a long push in the Navy when I was in that officers did not see a value in chief initiation, is what we call it, right? So when you go from a first class E6 to a chief petty officer, you go through what they call now induction. It used to be initiation. It was called CPO 365. It was called transition. They've had many different names for it, but it's basically ANOC, BNOC, Senior Enlisted Academy on steroids, 6 weeks. Let's turn these guys into leaders that understand how to work with the top and the bottom. But what happens is there's a mix of Mustangs that get in there that were chiefs before, that probably had a bad experience in their transition to be a chief petty officer, that they were like, it doesn't even matter. They're just doing bullshit. And then you've got officers that never had a good chief, and it happens, and they don't see the value. And so what they're trying to do is completely take that away. And the result is junior level officers doing dumb shit and getting in trouble because their chief's not there to go, hold on. That's not the decision to make. Let's work through this real quick. And let's make sure we make a good decision. And then it's also, are we training the chiefs of today to have that mantra or have the ability to make that decision, right? Do the chiefs have the level of accountability and the reins to do that job? And so there's a mix of both because, there's, we got this side of the story, we got that side of the story. The truth is in the middle. But anytime you see a lot of people being relieved in the Navy, it's a chief's mess problem. 100%. The chief's mess is either not together or the chief's mess is ineffective. And that's where leaders get relieved. That's where junior sailors get in trouble because that management right there that keeps the whole thing moving. And there's a phrase, chiefs are the backbone of the Navy. They keep it running, right?
Yeah.
Because of the up and down leadership formation. And so I would tell you that, in my opinion, that's why you're seeing a lot of junior officers getting relieved, is because they don't have.
These are commanders and
chiefs.
captains that I'm talking about.
Same thing. They don't have that. Chiefs, it doesn't matter if you're an 01 to an 06. Like, you have that command master chief, or you have your senior chiefs, or you have whoever it is that give you that guidance, right? Like, I have a couple of people that, you know, I hold dear that I served with. One's a retired captain, one's a retired commander. And when I worked with them, like, we had discussions on how things worked to see how the junior level would take it versus how the senior level would take it and work into the middle. It was just a different dynamic on how to make sure that we're making the right decision. I didn't always win either, right? Because I'm still low on the totem pole, but I think that there's a mid-level leadership problem there that's not allowing for that same kind of mentorship. And if you're looking at a commander or a captain, they probably didn't have a strong division chief when they were a division officer learning how to lead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always, you can always go back to that a little bit, but
Yeah,
that's
like
what
you
I've
said,
seen in the military. I might be wrong, but
you know, when you say like the Chiefs and stuff are the backbone of the Navy, and you really put that into perspective, if you take the backbone away from anything that has a backbone, it's not going. You know what I mean? It really can't survive or move the way it needs to move, and it just goes back to the part of, you know, when you take away the things, the core things that are those disciplines, those bumpers, those lines. When you start trying to broaden those lines or fade them out or take them away, imagine something that we all probably love, football, right? Imagine football with no lines. What would that game be? Imagine basketball with no lines. What would it be? Volleyball with no lines. Anything that you play has guidelines. You have bumpers. You have pillars. Ping pong. If you're out of bounds or you're in bounds, when you start playing with those lines and you start wondering why all these other things are happening, stop playing with the lines. Keep those lines firm. Keep the direction straight, and the problems will seem to go away. But again, we're so busy trying to water down things to make it easier and lighter for this new generation that's coming up that don't know how to deal with problems. They don't know how to deal with things because we give them everything else to deal with it except for the straight foundation and stuff that they need, right?
Right.
It falls apart.
Also, dude, the key is in this statement right here. That's the statement, dude. Throughout history, right? Hard times, Great Depression. Right. People came out of that bitch and they were like, we got to go to work, right?
We got to work it.
We got to go to work. And then because of that and all the suffering they had, the next generation is taking care of a little bit more. They still worked, and it just keeps going. And so we're at the point now where we're trying to make all these decisions where people have it easier, because easier is the way to go, right? AI, you know, social media, work from home, telecommuting. Heaven forbid you have to drive 15 minutes to go to work. Oh my God, that's like a mental breakdown. But there's no adversity that you have to face, right? And so, like, even in every household you have, like, it's a difficult thing to do. You have kids that come home from school, their parents try to tell them, you got to do this. And the parents are like, I don't know, my teacher said I don't have to do that, or whatever it is, right? And you're like, wait, what? And then you hear that they're being taught different things. Like, there's no emphasis on like the parent or leadership, right? Like, the parent's there to be the parent. Parents get arrested for having opinions. What the fuck is that all about? Like, that's my kid. I can have an opinion, but now I get in trouble for having the opinion. So that causes this argument. And all it is pushing those narratives to all the things that are the hot button topics that cause grief, instead of, let's just sit down and talk about it. Let's figure out what is the best thing, right? Is it really valid to do this or that? And it's the same in the military. I'm sure there's a better way to train. Let's figure it out. There's a whole bunch of smart people there that could do that. But right now, somebody wants to be the decision maker, right? I got to win and get my decision. And, you know, we've seen that, Scott, you and I, with Navy recruiting, right? It changes. It's not working. Now they're going back to the old, hoping that it's going to work, but the standards are different. Like, it's a cycle.
There's a better way to train, but not training is not the better way. You know what I mean? So
I got to jump off. It's
Yeah.
been great. I really had a great time talking to everybody this evening. Appreciate you all. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks,
Carl.
thank you.
See you, Carl. I want to ask the Marines in here a question. How many Marines we got left in here?
Just me.
Who knows?
Okay. And I'll talk to recruiters as well. When I follow recruiting patterns, the Marine Corps seems to be one of the only services that, I mean, like people beat down their door to get in.
Yeah.
What do they do? How can you share that with other services? And also, I took my niece to join the Coast Guard. Okay, they don't recruit. It's a job interview.
Yep.
I mean, the Coast Guard decides if they want you or not.
Yeah.
How can we take those two and put them together to maybe make something a little more enticing? And
So,
get,
so like Chuck here says, the Marines don't compromise on their culture. So when it comes to Marine Corps, people want to be a Marine because of the legacy that was formed before me. I joined in '97, and my whole family was Army. And I was like, no, I'm going to go to the Marines. I want to be the best of the best. And that's the mentality of the Marine Corps. Just like the commercial, the feuds are proud. The Marines, we focus on that. That's like, you go to Marine Corps boot camp, get out of Marine Corps, go into the Army. I don't have to go through basic training. Go to Army, try to go to Marines. Guess what? You got to go through boot camp because Marines are not going to let you join. When everybody says Marines are brainwashed. We're not brainwashed. We go through boot camp. We're broken all the way down to bare bones and then rebuilt. That's why, you join the Army, you join the Navy, you join the Air Force, you become a Marine. And that's where a lot of branches out there, they don't, you just join. You do your contract, you're out. Being a Marine, you're a Marine for life. Regardless, male, female, you're a Marine for life. It's a brotherhood like no other. And don't get me wrong, I have respect for every branch out there. But when it comes to Marine Corps tradition, there's none other like it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
I would agree with you on that, Willis. And I would say that, I think that what you guys get in the beginning in the Marine Corps, like that break you down, build you up part. I think in the Navy, we get that same thing when we go through that chief initiation or that part, right?
So we do it at the senior leadership level.
A little bit farther down the line. But I like Jake was saying, that the reason why people are beating down the door, because believe it or not, people really want to get a change. They go to the military because they want to be different from what they were, right? Yep. But like you were saying, when you look at the Coast Guard and you look at some of the Air Force, and not to bash any branch of service, but some of it is more so like a job interview. Like, okay, well, you know what? We'll take your information now. We'll give you a call, because it's not that same. It's not that same thing. You knew if you went into that Marine recruiting office that you weren't going to be in there joking around. You weren't going to. It was going to be straight to the point. You were going to get it. And when you went to boot camp, you were going to be changed from the beginning. You knew that. Most people get into the Navy, and then people who get to a point, they get in the Navy and they're like, you know what? I just want to be a chief. They want to, no matter how they get it, the enlisted person wants to be a chief because they want to go through that. They want to go through that transition to come out on the other side different. Yeah. And that is the thing, is that if you can go into something that is corporate, like a job, and you can go there and you can work and you don't really have to worry about, too much fussing and cussing this way or that way. I'm going to stay away from the Marines. If I go in the Navy, I'll do that, but I'm not going to be a chief, or I'll go into an officer program. Yeah. But there are some people that want that straight impact to change and take them from a place where they were to where they want to go. And I think that you definitely get that in the beginning. Even in the Army, there are, can't discredit the Army, because that's another one that you're going to get it. You know what I mean? You're the Army way, and how you're going to get in the Army. It's just different time frames where the impact changes in the amount that it does to where you're going to get it. But I think all branches of the military have it. I think it's different times. And I think that for the Marine, you get it right in the beginning. Like initial.
Well, but I mean, look at Marines. A Marine Corps recruiter, predominantly, what are they wearing?
They're
Blues.
Because that's the only uniform that matters to them. Right. That's the uniform.
And they've never changed it.
Correct.
Right.
And when you become a
That's
staff
true.
sergeant, you get the red line down your pants. And now when you're a staff sergeant compared to a sergeant and you're at a school and people are like, why has he got a red one and you don't? And you're like, well, it's because I'm a fucking badass. That's why.
Hold on.
And that's
So
what they
you're talking
do. Here's the thing. That's what they do. Marine recruiters, when they walk in the door, they're the alpha male in the room.
Yep.
Nobody's going to tell them that they can't do, see, or say anything. You can see that in their attitude, right? Whereas being a recruiter for so many years, Navy recruiters, Army recruiters, Air Force recruiters don't go to work because they make quota super quick. I don't know if it's like that anymore, but the Army and the Navy were trying to become friends with the kids to kind of take them from the Marine recruiters, because those Marine recruiters were like, it was amazing to see them go, you're not good enough. We don't want to talk to you. And that kid's like, I am good enough. And they run in the door, right? They want to be a part of that group that they can't get into. There's no access to it. I have to prove myself. I remember talking to a lot of kids in high schools and going, oh, you joined the Marines? They're like, no, not yet. I'm like, wait a minute. You didn't join yet. They're like, nah, but I know what my job's going to be. What's it going to be? A Marine. Well, when are you joining? And this time, like, they had it down to where, like, these kids already felt like they were in. They never even joined. They build that, like, family and brotherhood from the beginning. They do it in their debt meetings. They bring kids in. They do physical training. They do the pull-ups. Like, those kids, when you see them in the front of the recruiting station, you're like, that dude is joining the Marine Corps. I can tell. You can change how he walks and how he tans, you know. It's just a difference. And to what Scott said, all the other services do that in a different
time period
part in their career. Whereas the Navy is where you're at the chief. And so, like, when you know, Ty, we've talked about it before. Ty was like, man, I saw some chiefs and I was like, what the fuck is it about these Navy chiefs? Like, what's the deal with them? When they walk in the room and you're around a predominantly like Navy command, a chief walks in the room and everybody's like, ooh, good morning, chief. The Divo walked in, they're like, good morning, sir. But the chief got more respect. Like, what's that all about? And it's the timing by which you do it. You know what I mean? But Marines are the best at doing it from the beginning. There's a reason just like the uniform that Rich said, the slogan hasn't changed ever either. The few, the proud.
Exactly.
Period.
Yeah. What are you going to say, Willis?
So you were talking about the blood stripe that goes down the blue pants. You actually get that as an E4.
Okay.
So as a corporal. Now, what I can say about the delayed entry program, I was on the delayed entry program, the DET program, for a year. So my beginning of my junior year, my senior year, until I went to boot camp. And you're right, we do. They bring in poolies, is what they call them. They bring them in. They do physical fitness, tests, PFTs. They go out and help in the community for like Toys for Tots, and they do all this stuff, and it does become a brotherhood before you even join. Like, I knew exactly when I went into the recruiter and talked to Gunny Groach. He goes, "What do you want to do in the Marine Corps?" I said, "I want to be infantry," and I knew right then that's going to be my job. Now, I could have went anywhere in the Marine Corps with that. My score on my ASVAB, I could have had pretty much any job I wanted, but I told him I wanted to be infantry. And, and that 2 years of being a year and a half, 2 years on the delayed entry program, I made a bond with all the other people that were there. And some of them I went to boot camp with, some of them, came in later. But you still have that friendship. Like Sam Deeds, I had him on my podcast. Me and him were boot camp buddies, battle buddies. Never met the guy. He was from Maine. Met him first day as soon as we stepped on the yellow footprints. I met him, and we've been friends ever since.
Yeah, they do a good job at bringing kids back from boot camp into the office to talk to all the poolies that are still there or go into the high schools. The Marine Corps does that very well. Like, they bring everybody back that's from that hometown.
Yeah.
The Navy just is like, you want some free vacation? We won't count leave against you if you go help your recruiter. And so like half the recruiters are like, bro, just go home. You ain't going to do nothing for me. But when we went to a school and saw the Marine Corps guys, that's where I guess I saw the difference. In like the boot camp guy didn't have the blood stripe, the recruiter did, and it's like, it's almost like I've graduated to like the varsity. This dude's still in the JV, but look at him today, and their table was always packed, dude. I was just like kind of like trying to get somebody's eye and just like pull them over, you know what I mean? But they do a good job at building that community from the beginning, right? It's what it means to be that. And they've stayed strong to it too. I think that's the biggest key, is they don't change slogans, they don't change uniforms. We are the Marine Corps. This is what we do. And we're not going to, change that. Whereas the Navy and the Army, they've had uniform changes, slogan changes, things are different. There's a very consistent branding to the Marine Corps. I think they do that good.
Well, that's like with I just saw something on one of the sites. The Marine Corps was trying to figure out new PT gear for the Marines, and after 3 years, they couldn't change it. So they just canceled the whole change in the. So now it's back to the silkies and green on green, which is what it's always been.
I knew we did it right the first time. No need to change.
No need to change. And
you got to keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what the Marine Corps. Like I said earlier, we're a brotherhood like no other. And I'll never knock the Navy. I'll never knock the Army, Air Force, maybe Space Force, because I don't know anything about them. But
it's the Air Force on steroids.
Yeah. So, and then go back to your point with the Coast Guard. Are they really? I mean, where do they fall at when it comes to military branches?
So they're Department of Homeland Security. But they're legit a job interview. If you want to join the Coast Guard, you're going to mail them your shit, and then they're going to tell you can come and talk to us at this time. They normally have one recruiting station for a region, and they're very, very selective. It is hard to get into the Coast Guard. We make fun of those dudes in the Navy, but it's hard to get in there, dude. You gotta almost be like one of the best to get into the Coast Guard, because they don't take very many people. They're very selective, and like they had a civilian secretary at the front desk when you come in to go see the recruiter. Man. It's like, is this the military? Maybe because it's Department of Homeland Security, but only reason I know all that, there was a Coast Guard office like right next to one of the offices I managed in New Orleans. And so like the lady would be in there and only the civilian secretary was in there. So you'd go in and be like, where's the recruiters? Like, I don't got any appointments for a couple weeks. Like you're sending like medical paperwork to them. They're going, yeah, you can go to MEPS next week. Like they got a pretty good process to join, but they're very selective. So it's really hard to get in. And so like, there's more of a prestige there. If you ever get a kid that comes to you and goes, I want to join the Coast Guard, you almost feel like you got to try to help them out. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you want to join the Coast Guard? I got you.
Rich, you've been awful quiet, brother.
I've been listening. It's a great choice here. Listening to the Marine Corps stuff, I agree. I mean, they have not changed anything over time, and the perception of brainwashing is always there, of course. And I fought with the Marines in Ramadi as an Army guy. It was the first time I got to interact with them on the ground level. I led a squad of them because they lost their gunny and their squad leader, the staff sergeant, and one of them threw a grenade into a room as I entered it, because that's how they clear rooms. So that's how I learned about the Marines. They think, always thinking forward, clear to do things first before thinking. And but I also earned a lot of respect for them. When a man goes down or when their brothers go down, they don't quit fighting, but they also don't forget their brother that's on the ground. They make sure that brother gets out of there and everything is collected. So I make fun of the Marines all the time. I know I have a crayon factory building for them right now, and that's something we all do for the Marines. But because we have to keep you under our arm, make sure you guys are all right and leading that straight and narrow. But I do agree that it's easier to recruit for the Marines because their brand has not changed.
Right.
We in the Army since 2001, I think we've 4 different uniforms since 2001. That's just our regular duty uniform. Dress uniform, I think we've had 3. PTs, I think we've had 2. Yeah, I think you guys have gone through 2 or 3 in that same time as far as duty uniforms. Not as much as your dress uniforms. But And our slogans too, like Matt saying, our slogan has changed over time, over and over. It changes. Now we're back to that "be all you can be" stuff. We're going
They
back.
should have never changed that one, bro. They should have never changed
commercials.
Yeah.
Great commercials back in the days.
Was stupid.
Yes.
Yeah, we loved when you guys had that one. We were like, listen, Army of One, you know what that means, right? You're gonna be the only one, dude. No one's there for you. They'd be like, what? I'm just saying, you could accelerate your life, or you could be the only one. I don't know.
One.
Yeah.
It was a hard. That marketing plan was horrible, and it failed. I'm pretty sure it failed pretty horribly. 2007 is when we had to adjust to that. When we let everyone in, we went into the prison systems and took a lot of souls in from the prison systems. And those are the leaders now in the Army. Those guys who came in 2007. Those are the ones who are leaders now. So it's hard to look at the leaders now in the Army and think, where did they come from? Were they surge sergeants? Are they surge sergeants? Did they get pushed through promotions because there was no one left? And everyone else was getting out because either wounded or retirement or end of service. And I think as the Army grows or the military grows now, we have to start thinking of the future. And technology is the future. And we know that all kids now are growing up with tablets in their hands and stuff. You can't go to kindergarten without knowing how to get on a computer. And the kids now in the military, like me and Jake train them right now, we have to have a VR kit to understand some of the equipment we use. If they don't have that VR kit, it's hard for them to understand how to use that equipment in their hand. It can be in their hand, but if it's not on a computer screen, they can't understand it. And it's hard it's a big jump for us to adjust to that and not just do the hands-on. But I think as we evolve, our Army, our military, our Navy, Marines, Air Force will all still be the best in the world. We just need to get those leaders back in place to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I think once we get out of this rut, when I come in, there were still a lot of Vietnam veterans that, that was our senior NCOs and a lot of our mid-level to senior level officers. And the Army really wasn't that fun then because a lot of these guys didn't want to be there. They were just waiting out their time to retire. And I think, because the country had been at war for so long. And I think since now that everything is cooled down, I think maybe in the next 2 to 5 years, things might get better once some of these leaders that are in there now and some of the folks that are in there now that have spent most of their career deployed, I think once they get out, I think that might change things a little bit. I hope it does. But I think we just hit a lull like we did, between, 75 and about 88, 90.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of it though is like there's no workup or deployment to get ready for right now? So they're not like their senses aren't over engaged to know what's going to happen next, and now they're like, wait a minute, we're not going to go fight nobody. I don't know what to do now. Like, what are you talking? Let's yell at some people. You know what I mean?
And that could be too.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Exactly.
Yeah, and y'all know if we don't have anybody else to fight, we'll fight each other.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I think I came in not right after that, but I came in '96, so there was still a little bit of that, right? We had some guys from that era that they were like, "You guys don't know any." I used to get the school, snow uphill 10 miles. You know what I mean? You don't know what's going on, and I was like, "But we don't do that no more." And so that's why I said earlier in the podcast, like, I'm holding out hope that like it's still gonna be just like it was when we were in. Like, we're still gonna be okay. We just don't see it because we're those guys now that are judging, critiquing, and breaking everything down to what's not going right. And because we're not in the realm of, doing the job every day, we don't know what's changed. So the easiest thing for us to do is criticize, right? But we're not there every day. I think Rich and Jake, you guys are probably the closest to that of any of us, because you guys train people every day. But I wouldn't even be able to tell you what's broke, what's fixed, what's not working. I don't even know. So I try not to have an opinion except for what I talk to my buddies about and I see, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Well, I gotta head out, fellas. I got daddy and husband duties I gotta do in the evening time.
Trouble.
You know how it
Don't
goes.
get in trouble. Hell
But
yeah.
it's good meeting you, Jake. Willis,
Good
always
meeting you.
nice. Nice to
Peace.
see you, Rich. You
Awesome,
guys are
brother.
great, man.
Be
Till
good,
next
buddy.
time. All right, you guys have a good one.
Later,
Be
brother.
good, brother. Peace out.
TY Matt, talk to you guys.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So yeah, we just had a podcast the other night with Veterans Village or Veterans Villages, and they are dealing with like veteran homelessness, and so they got a Veterans Village in Philadelphia that they've completed. It's modular homes, and the number of homeless veterans throughout the country, it's staggering. Just to see the stats on it and stuff is just it's mind boggling. So have you guys seen anything like in your areas where you live where people are trying to help in veteran homelessnesses?
I don't know who the organization is, Ty, but did you see they have in Houston where we live, there is a veteran like neighborhood. They just built one. I don't know who runs it or who's a part of it, but they just built like a veteran neighborhood for like homeless veterans to live in. But I wonder sometimes what the demographic of homeless veterans is, if that makes sense, right? Were they career guys? Were they not career guys? Did they just do a couple years? Because I mean, at the end of the day, the skill set that you get taught in the military, even though we don't do a good job to exit you from the service, I mean, you should be able to find something, right? I mean, I know that there's exceptions to that rule, but I would be interested to see what the statistics are on that.
So here I'm at on website National Homeless
Boom, Veterans Village. That's what I'm talking about. Chuck is on it.
Veterans Village. I love it. I love it. So this was published by the National Coalition for the Homeless, June 2008. So it's a little old. This was
Just a little bit.
So this is approximately 40% of homeless men are veterans, although veterans comprise only 34% of the general adult male population. The National Coalition for Homeless Veterans estimate that on any given night, 200,000 veterans are homeless, and 400,000 veterans will experience homelessness during the course of a year. That's staggering. Like,
That's insane.
Yeah, that's insane.
Well, but think about it too. A lot of veterans are used to barracks, free place to live. I was in the military. I never had to look for a place to live. Now I'm out.
Yep.
Shit, it's not free. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? So there's probably a lot of overarching. And that's what I'm saying. Like, even though we don't prepare you the best to get out of the military, you still have a skill set to be resilient, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do teach. And so sometimes I think, we could do a little bit better at that. But like that Houston Village he was talking about, I saw it on the news the other day where they've like kind of created another interesting thing in the news in Houston. On the news the other day, the news anchor was talking about VA loans and saying like, oh, you could buy a house with a VA loan. Normally, people don't want to accept VA loans because the veteran's not putting any money down. That's like the biggest detractor. They don't have money. And I'm thinking like, they don't have to put money down.
It's a guaranteed loan
out there, right?
Yep.
So now the news is pushing VA loans. I wonder what's going on in the housing market. I'm just saying.
Look at that.
Well, the housing market moment.
But I think that like it's good that they got these communities being built up. But again, I would be interested to see the statistics on it. Like, what's the demographic of those guys that are falling into that, and how can we help them? You know what I mean?
I think there's a big mix within the veteran homeless community. Some do it because they need to get away from people and they try to stay and they escape. That's their escape. And then there's some that get out and they, like you said, Matt, they're so used to everything being there for them that now when they my big plan is I'm going to get out and everything's going to be there for me, and it's not there. You have to find it, and all of a sudden there's nothing there. And now you're living under that bridge, or you're living in that wood in the park somewhere by your house. In Clarksville, Tennessee, we have behind a lot of the supermarkets in the woods. There's a lot of people sitting there in tents and such like that because of that same reason. Because we have 30,000 veterans that are living in the area, and then there's X amount of veterans that stay here that we don't know about that are homeless. Right. Yeah, definitely. Chuck Tyler, Fort Campbell. We have to focus on them and maybe get out there and talk to them. Say, hey, what happened, brother? What happened, sister? This is what we can do for you, but I need to give you a hand up. I'm not giving you a handout. If I keep giving you a handout, this circle just keep going back to that same point. Right. You go back to that same area. There's nothing I can do for you if I keep giving you a handout. If I give you the hand up and maybe push you to the right direction, then you're going to be able to help the next dude do that. That's in the same situation. And that's what we all need to strive to do at that point right there.
Well, here's some demographics from the same article. Homeless veterans are more likely to be white, better educated, and previously or currently married than homeless non-veterans. Female homeless veterans represent an estimated 3% of homeless veterans. They are more likely than male homeless veterans to be married and to suffer serious psychiatric illness, but likely to be employed and to suffer from addiction disorders. Comparisons of homeless female veterans and other homeless women have found no difference in rates of mental illness or addictions. Minorities are overrepresented among homeless veterans. 56% are African American or Hispanic, just as they are among the homeless population in general. However, there is some evidence that veteran status reduces vulnerabilities to homeless among Black Americans. Black non-veterans are 2.9 times more likely to be homeless than white non-veterans. So yeah, it goes on. So it's
well, what I mean, if you look at what you just said there, Willis, that we've always said the military is just a microcosm of society, right? Just because you're a veteran doesn't mean that you're not still in the society that is America, right? So if it's like 20% divorce here, you're probably going to have the same number, a little bit more in the veteran population, but that's because there's less veterans to pull from. But if you compared them side by side, it would be almost the same, right? Yeah. And so the thing that we do, though, the thing I don't like about a lot of articles is they push with the negative, right? I didn't hear you say anything in there. There's all these things we can do to help. Like, I get it. We know there's a problem, but what can we do to help, right? And so I it's sad and it sucks and it's horribly bad, but there's not enough, what can we do to help people? That's why I like doing stuff like this with you guys, right? We have people in Kentucky, Texas. I don't know where everybody else was from, but I mean, it's like, hey, this is what we can do to help people. So this just shows people that it's not just in one place, it's in multiple places. Yeah. We teach you in boot camp to be resilient, like I said already. You're in the military, but don't forget that just because you served in the military doesn't mean that you're going to have that same mindset as what you would think a veteran is, right? Like, think about your average celebrity. If you see him in a movie, you think when you meet him in public, they're going to be this funny, cool guy, right? Then you meet him in public, you say something to them, and they're like the rudest person ever. Yeah. Probably because 100,000 people a day are trying to get their autograph and trying to take their picture, and they're just fed up with it. So they're not the same person that you thought they would be from all the movies you watched. And it's the same with veterans. Like, just because you're a veteran doesn't mean like you're at the tip of the spear, excuse the pun, right? But at the same time, even if you're not, there's still something we can do to help. You know what I mean? Because even if you're not that veteran that's resilient, the veteran community bonds together, and we should be helping each other to get there. And so I just wish that we had more education on what we can do to help. I think transition is a big deal, like getting out. And I would tell you that I don't think transition for senior level guys like all of us is one of those things that you should say is an issue, because let's be honest, We taught sailors and Marines and soldiers, and we mentored them. And we should have probably done a little bit better of a job of transitioning ourselves.
Mhm.
But these kids that are in for 2-3 years, forced out for whatever reason, if all they know is that for 3 years, they probably should get a little bit of a better path to get out, right? There should be something there, and what that is, I don't know. Maybe we create something. I'm ready if you guys are.
There
Yeah.
are
Let's do it.
organizations out there, like KY Valor. Then you got Indiana Vets, and then you got Mission Wisconsin, and there's others. I'm sure there are, but those are the ones that I've interviewed on my podcast. And what those guys do, they take military members who are transitioning out, and they help them create a resume. They help them, guide them, and find them jobs. And they even work with veterans that have been out for 20 years. So like when, I guess it was 2018, that law came about where your military service now will translate into the civilian sector. So prime example, like my stepdad, he was in the National Guard for 20 plus years. Well, when he got done with that, he wanted to go into telecommunications, which is what he did in the Army. Well, they were like, well, your experience that you had in the Army doesn't translate to the civilian sector. Well, as of 2018, now your military service does translate. And that's where KY Valor, Mission Wisconsin, and Indiana Vets, those guys, they help the transitioning military members become, I don't want to use the word productive, but productive members of society.
They're competitive in the job market, right? They're gonna showcase them and put them in the front, and that's part of the deal. Is how do you become productive, competitive, and able to get a job? The problem is you're getting out of the military in a month, and you haven't done shit to look for a job. You don't know what you're going to do. You haven't prepared, but you have all of your senior level leadership telling you, do you have a plan to get out? Are you sure that this first enlistment is done for you? Because I don't know about you guys. I was there. I said I was getting out in 5 years. 5 years came fast. I didn't know what I want to do when I grew up, and I stayed longer. Like, I get it, but if you don't have a plan, like, what are you going to do? You can't just, this isn't something you just figure out. Yeah. And I think that's where that equals into, like, you have more homeless people and people who don't have a place to live. And because once they get out, the drill sergeant, the first sergeant, their company commander, their chief isn't there going, hey, you got to do this today. They're like, oh shit, I got to do it on my own. And then that's where some of that problem comes in. But I like that they have those organizations out there to do that. But can we get that into the transition classes? Yeah. Like, let's really talk about writing a resume. Like, I don't give a damn about how it all this other stuff works. Like, I went through TGPS in Texas. I had to go through 3 days of Texas Workforce Commission required training for the job labor force. None of it applied to me. None of it was going to help me get a job, but the state of Texas requires it, right, in order for you to go through the program because of where you're at, because you may go into the job market, which it's all good, but the amount of time they spent looking at my resume was about 10 minutes. They're like, yep, you made one. Good job. I was like, thanks.
Well, I do know that, like, KY Valor, Indiana Vets, and Mission Wisconsin, those guys actually travel around the country. And what they do is they go speak to military members that are getting out or close to getting out. And those guys, they try to get them to come back to Kentucky for one, or Indiana or Wisconsin. And, they partner with all these corporate entities and jobs throughout the state of Kentucky or Indiana, and say, well, try to entice them back to whatever state they're from. So they do travel, which is pretty cool that they do that.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so it's a really good program, and it's just it's something that is needed because, like you said, there's I'm gonna use me as a prime example. My plan was to do 20 years in the military, if not more. I did my time in the Marine Corps, got out the first time, 4 years, 2 months, talked to an Army recruiter, 9/11 happened, and got recalled back in. And then when I got out the second time, I went back and talked to the same Army recruiter, and I had it set up. I was going to go to Germany for 5 years. I was going to go from E5 to E6, $50,000 enlistment bonus, and change my job from infantry to telecommunications. Well, because they said I had asthmatic symptoms as a child, never was diagnosed with asthma, but said I had asthmatic symptoms, they wouldn't let me join the Army. I'm like, I got 2 honorable discharges. Here's my DD-214s, and you're telling me I can't go in the Army? And they're like,
they just
yeah,
had higher standards, bro.
I guess. But it was also the same time where the military changed the tattoo policy as well, where you couldn't have tattoos below your elbow. And I had the Grim Reaper here, and I'm thinking that's why, but they wouldn't come out and say that's why officially.
Well, it's easier to give you some other reason than the real reason, because then they have to have a real conversation with you, because you can be like, I had it in the Marine Corps and it was all good. It's a pre-existing condition. I can go in, but I mean, it's just bananas how that happens, right? Like they just don't pay attention to those things. I mean, the process to go from one to the other is completely different too. That's what makes it so hard, is like how the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Air Force and the Space Force all transition people out is different. Like it's the DOD. Hopefully it would be the same. Like you said, the whole thing about transitioning, right? As an example for you, I got out of the military. I had a bachelor's degree. I've since got a master's degree. I'm working on another degree. Doesn't equal more money for me compared to the other people I work with that are in the same role. Like that degree is not looked at any different. But I've been told my entire life, if you have a degree, right, the degree is what you need, right? So I went and got all the degrees.
Yeah.
And it doesn't translate, even though I have the resume and all that stuff. And so like I think the frustration for some veterans out there is like, how do I find the thing that I'm going to land into, and how do I know that that's the right fit, right? And this to be real, like if you know somebody, you'll be good to go. Just like in the military, I know the supply guy will be good. If you don't know the supply guys, you're going to be cold that night. You're probably not going to be hungry too. But you know, it's figuring it out, and I think that's the part that's helped me so much is the network of veterans that I know, and each of us reaching out to each other and getting opportunities for each other to go into those different places. Now that doesn't happen for everybody, but I think people should still understand you got to continue that tradition of having each other six, right? You say at the end of your podcast, that's my company's is Got Your Six. Like we need to have that importance on everything that we're doing, and you know, helping one person at a time is what's going to be important. We all know somebody that's hiring for something, maybe.
Yeah.
Do we know somebody that can fit it? And at that point, it's like just trying to connect them. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, like I remember when I got out, I applied to a whole bunch of jobs. And it didn't work. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I was like, this is crazy as shit. I should have got out 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's crazy. I mean, you know, and we talk about it numerous times where we're stronger together than we are individually. And there's a lot of veteran service organizations out there, and we've talked about this on other, you know, on your podcast, my podcast, and Rich's podcast. If you're a veteran service organization and you don't want to work with other veteran service organizations, then are you really doing the veterans that are within your organization? Are you doing them a disservice, or are you trying to just protect yourself? Because if say Jake here, he belongs to Veterans Club of Tennessee, all right, and he feels that they're not a good fit for him because they're not helping him with what he needs help with, and he decides to step over here to say I don't know, something else, and it's a better fit. Well, Veterans Club of Tennessee is going to get upset because Jake left. You know, that they're worried about is that number or that funding that they're losing because Jake left. So
I'll be honest with you. I and my wife and I in the company that we work in, we try to find hyper local places to work with. And the reason we do that is because they don't have super high funding, right? And if you're at the ground level, you're looking to make a difference in something else. It's horrible to know that some organizations would look at somebody different because they found a better opportunity to help veterans, which that organization said they're doing too, and they feel like that's a better fit and a better path for them. It's horrible to think that, but I mean, let's be real, right? It's money. That's the root of it. It's where it all starts. There's money involved. Sometimes the lines are blurred, and you're not gonna get the reality that comes with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, not that we don't like the big organizations, right? They're doing great things, but in my opinion, they got enough. They don't need what I'm going to give, because I'm not even going to give a drop in the bucket to what they get. But that small hyper local, and I don't care where the hyper local is. They could be in Oregon, they could be in Kansas, they could be in Texas, they could be in Kentucky. I don't care. They're hyper local and they're doing great things. We would love to support them because they're still trying to build something. And I just found that like those organizations still have the values and the importance of what they're doing. That mission is important still, right? It's not all funded anymore. And so that's the people we like to work with.
So that's like with my podcast is we focus on 501c3s from around the country. I want to bring in the grassroots ones because they're the ones that are out there, working day in, day out and doing it because of, they still believe in the mission of helping the veteran. Now, I'm not saying that I won't bring in like Mission 22 or Wounded Warrior or one of the bigger name ones. I have had Mission 22 on, and everyone does their own little niche. But if you don't work together, like you just said there, if you don't work together, then you're not really solving the problem. You're just worried about yourself and the money. And me personally, if you are a veteran service organization and all you care about is your paycheck that you're getting from that organization, that's not right. If you're a veteran service organization, you should be all volunteer based, because if you're volunteer based, you're doing it for the right reason. That's my opinion.
Sure. I mean, things still need to operate, and you need money to operate them. But at the same time, when you look at that, like if you're a veteran service organization trying to help people, then help them, right? Help them. Don't turn people away. Don't tell people that what you have, we don't do. Then connect them with somebody. This is what I wish some of those organizations would do. For anybody on here, how many different units did you guys work with to get the shit you needed?
A bunch.
We may not have it, but they got it over there. So we're going to go get it from them, and we're going to barter and trade to make sure that we can still do what we got to do. Right?
Yep.
But after you get out, it's like that's forgotten. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to help everybody and give everybody an opportunity. Like you should just care about the person, not what you're going to get from helping the person. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Now I know there's operational costs to run a veteran service organization. I mean, you gotta have money for advertisement. You gotta have money for this or that. Yes, I understand. But what I was talking about getting paid is if you're vice president, or whatever position on the board, you shouldn't be getting paid to do that. You should be a volunteer based. That way you don't get a paycheck. That way more money goes back to the veterans that you're trying to help than your own pocket. That's what I'm thinking. So
no, for sure. I mean, but again, like the money that comes in helps it operate, right? It helps you give more to that. But I think the problem sometimes, Willis, is people that go into these organizations, they turn that into their job, right?
Yeah.
So now that's how I feed my family. That's how I pay my bills. That's how I do what I got to do. And so in order for me to do that, I got to make this money. In order to make this money, I got to do these things. And these things equal grabbing all these people to do different stuff. And now it's become a job for them. Yeah. Whereas in the beginning, they probably volunteered, right? But they were so good at it, just like in the military. My man Ty was so good at what he did. People were like, we need him. Let's go get him. Whatever it takes, we're going to bring Ty with us and we're going to be good to go. And so it turns into I'm needed, right? Like I almost am like celebrity status, right? So you need me to do what you do. And I mean, we're human, dude. That stuff takes effect into the brain. It makes you think a different way. And, every single thing starts with a good intention.
Oh,
everything.
Yeah. Nah, I
somewhere down
agree
the
with
line, it doesn't, so.
But that's when
You just got to think about it that way. When, like you were saying, Matt, sometimes it becomes their identity instead of their mission. Their mission is to help people, and it becomes their identity. My identity is to help people. And tonight we have touched a lot of subjects tonight on this, our second Veterans Roundtable Tip of the Spear. Great show tonight. I think, Willis, you put together a great panel tonight. And I also think we need to start wrapping it up. It's almost 2 hours. If anyone's still listening, we've probably lost them, or they're poking their eyes out right now. So I think we should just go around the horn right now. Ty, you have not said anything tonight, brother. Jump on in here. Give us some of your final thoughts, brother, and then we'll go around the horn.
Yeah. Every unit I was in the Army was the absolute best unit. I never had to borrow anything from the Marines, the Navy, or the Air Force or Coast Guard. All my mental health has always been top notch. All my soldiers always want to do all their work, and we accomplished every mission we ever had without a single fail. That's how I remember my career. No, just joking about all that. The reason I don't talk that much is I love listening and then forming an opinion based on what I've heard. And basically what I've heard is a lot of us have been out for a while. And I mean, it's very possible that the 20 years that we spent at war is the reason why people are so not good for the military right now, because they didn't have to learn how to shine boots. I came in '98, and I had a very short stint of learning, the shining boot phase of the Army, where you're literally doing sergeant's time training every day, all day, because that's what you're doing. You're just training for everything. So I do believe that the 20 years that we were at war in Iraq and Afghanistan and all around the rest of the world and where we're deployed definitely has an effect on our readiness today.
100%. Matt?
No, I'm good, man. I just appreciate meeting and talking with you guys today. It was a good time. I'm sure, the next one will be just as good. We'll still continue to do it. But, for anybody out there, if you need some help, there's a lot of guys on here that have some reach with different things. And so if you need some help, we all have organizations that can help you. Reach out and we'd be happy to help you.
Definitely. I'm definitely on the same boat, Matt. If anyone needs anything, reach out to me, richlamonica101@gmail.com, or go through Misfit Nation podcast website, and we will get back to you. We answer everyone that ask questions on there. If you have dire needs, dial 988. It's optional, and we don't need to have you as a statistic. We'd like to have you next to us next week, our next episode that will be in about a month, or maybe just after the new year. We'd love to see you in 2024, and that's how it's going to be. Willis, take us out.
All right, man. Yeah, so I want to thank everybody that came on tonight. Don Bramer, Carl Truman, you guys from Triple Threat, Rich, Jake. We missed Adam Bird tonight. I guess he had some things that came up. Mr. Pitts didn't make it tonight, but yeah, tonight was great. A lot of great information was came out tonight. A lot of great topics. Man, I tell you what, I say it. Rich has said it. Matt said it. Ty said it. If you're struggling out there, reach out to somebody. Reach out to a friend. Reach out to a stranger. Dial 988 option 1. Reach out to somebody. Don't become one of the 22 because you're worth it. No matter what your life is telling you, you are worth it. That's why we do what we do, with our podcast, with our veteran charity work that we do. You guys are worth it. So yeah. And like I say, when I close out my podcast every night, stay safe out there, and I got your 6. And in this case, we got your 6.
Amen.
So have a great night, guys.
All right. See you next month.
Next month.